So, yeah, I'm live on LinkedIn. I'm live. Can't send a message though. Oh, shit. God damn it. I didn't press the live button on LinkedIn. Scene is there. Done. Perfect. Perfect. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Come on in. Come on in. Let's get the comments working. If you can hear me, say something. If you're alright, say something. Something. That was a Pulp Fiction reference, of course. But if you can indeed hear me, say something. And then we'll have the show that we deserve. It's that good, right? It is that good. I guess I am audible on YouTube. Hello, good morning, Mr. Patil. Good morning. Can you hear me? Can you hear me properly? I'm on time today, right? I was before time today. On time on LinkedIn, on time on YouTube. Yes, audible. That's good. That's good. I'll just wait for that kind of confirmation on LinkedIn. And then we'll have our conversation. Conversation. Right? Conversation skill. Said STP. Can you hear me now? I think you can, right? Yeah. I just made some change here. You know what? Apple's laptop has its mic right on the speaker, in the speaker section, right? So when I do this, like if the newspaper hits like this, it affects the audio. Let's say if I cover the newspaper like this, if it affects the audio, even though I have the iPhone audio on. So that shouldn't happen, right? So yeah, I'm audible on LinkedIn as well, says Mr. Ashim Garg. So let's begin. Let's begin. Let's begin. Bum 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 bum. Hello everybody, welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, we've got to follow a tradition, right? The sacred, sweet tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together. It's supposed to be very lucky. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug or glass or tank, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having water with black pepper in it. It's supposed to be very good for me. And here we go! Ah, beautiful, beautiful, sublime. Let's do it again. Ah, you know what the simultaneous sip says, right? The simultaneous sip says that you're not alone, that we're in this together. And that's such a nice thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. Research says that simultaneous sippers are on an average 60% happier than regular human beings. Of course, that research was, if you've guessed it, published and funded by Nishant Mittal Co. But there was this research published in a major journal which said that sleep, adequate sleep, or the lack of sleep leads to reduction in physical activity. Like, wait a second. If you're about to spend like $1 million on research, just wait a second, you know, and ask me. Save that money, half of it, and ask me. But they don't. So since I can't stop them from publishing that kind of research, why don't we publish our kind of research? Like simultaneous sippers are 60% happier than regular human beings. Like who's to prove that we don't? We're not. We definitely look happy. Mr. Ashim Garg says man's at it even on Sunday. Oh yeah, 42nd episode, all days a week. It's a lot of fun. And if you've listened, you'll know why. So, BRICS declaration likely to include Pahalgam attack. BRICS is, I used to think earlier, that BRICS was just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, right? But there are a lot of other countries. Ethiopia, there's Saudi Arabia, which is not yet a member, but it's listed on the website. There are 11 members to BRICS. And now they're working on a formulation to confirm their stance on international terror. Who gives a shit about these proclamations, these Kadi Nindas and condemnations and official state? Who gives a shit about this, right? Who cares that if some country signed a letter stating that yes, these kind of superficialities don't matter at all, right? In the real world, does it really matter? I don't think so. Not one bit. But we got to do some job. We got to have some jobs for the foreign guys, the foreign services people, and they spend a lot of time working on these letters and organizing these Kadi Nindas, and god damn it. We have a very interesting story as far as the foreign affairs are considered. Trump says, Mr. Trump, US to send out 12 tariff letters tomorrow. So these conversations had been going on, right? For a long time. So Trump had said, you're going to get tariffed. Then countries said, no, we don't want to get tariffed. Then he said, okay, you can get on a deal. They said, okay, we are happy to get on the deal. And they then didn't get on the deal, right? And then those conversations dragged on and nothing happened. And then Trump lost it and he said, you're getting tariffed. So now his negotiation play is that he's gonna settle some negotiations with countries, important countries, and then he's just gonna hand out a letter. We're just gonna send the bill, he says. So he's gonna just send a letter to the country that congratulations, you're paying this much tariff. And then those countries will be like, no, but no, but we are happy to make a deal. It's like, you had enough time, you're making you're paying this much tariff. And then the country is like, oh, no, 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 but no, you're gonna pay this much tariff. If you want to make a deal, you could talk and we'll listen, but you're paying this much tariff. And then suddenly everybody gets in line. This is what happened with Canada. This is what happened with Europe. This is what happened with a lot of people. So Europe wasn't really moving forward on the deal. Then Trump issued a threat saying, okay, you're getting this much of a bill. And then they said, no, 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 no. Waiting to, we'll wait. And then Canada said that they're going to implement a digital sales tax on internet companies from America. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know we discussed it. And Trump said, just call off the deal. You're paying 25%. And then then Canada says, no, 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 we don't. We'll get back to it. We'll consider it. So that's how things happen, right? Instead of writing Kadi Ninda letters, BRICS, global cloud growing. Yeah, sure. Anyway, homegrown goods more shelf assured abroad. So, as viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know, we've already beaten this down to death. But yeah, India's consumption story is somehow not improving. People not spending money. People are not buying things. People are hoarding cash. 1.6% of what people spend right now is based on loans. About 2% if you include gold loans and so on and so forth. So spending is a problem. And if consumption doesn't happen, companies face a lot of problems. They start firing people, and then consumption doesn't happen more, and then they fire more, and it leads to a downward spiral. However, with Indian consumption going down, what FMCG majors have been looking at is some sort of foreign market play. So they are essentially exporting the FMCG produce from the country. That's interesting. That's interesting, right? So HUL, Dabur, and all of these players, ITC, Marico, have reported faster growth in their export revenue compared with local sales. So in local sales, they're not being able to grow at all, as you know. It's a very, very dead kind of a scene. But the international exports business is growing 8%. Uh, you know, However, it's just 3% of the entire pie, so that doesn't really cut it. It might just be low base, but yes, they have started exporting. So they say that West Asia, Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, UK, US, Canada, uh, these are the countries which are essentially looking at it, and they're also looking at the Indian restaurant segment. You know, so Indian diaspora is huge everywhere. Indians are everywhere. Indians are in India, and then Indians are everywhere in the world as well, right? And restaurant market is a huge market. So they are exporting to them, and then they're also exporting independently, but that restaurant market is huge. And this coincides with an analysis I wrote on Haldirams about 2 years ago. Okay. So about 1.5, 2 years ago, it was starting to come to light that Tata might just be acquiring Haldirams for 8 billion or something, right? And I had said, why would Tata buy Haldirams? Tata shouldn't buy Haldirams. I mean, Haldirams shouldn't sell to Tata. You know why? Because Haldiram could become the face of Indian food across the globe. Just imagine the company which is the face of Indian food across the globe as a part of their restaurant foray, or as a part of their uh, you know packaged foods foray. So think about it. Starbucks is a $150 billion company. Why should Haldiram stop at 10? Starbucks produces coffee. Okay, sure. Indians don't drink coffee. They they're trying still. They're not making money. But Indian food is very popular. in America, in Europe, even in Africa. You know, Indian food has a lot of takers. People love Indian food. I mean, there are some pockets of people who think it's gonna kill them because of the spices and all, but Indian food is universally loved almost, you know. So, if there is a company which could represent Indian food into the world, to the world, it's Haldiram's. And if Haldiram's begins that foray, and it's already doing that, why should it stop at 10 billion? When McDonald's is over $200 billion company, it's a $250 billion company, I think. Starbucks is a $150 billion company. Why should Haldiram stop at 10, right? And then what it came to be was like Haldiram's engaged everybody. They engaged Tatas. Then they didn't agree on valuation. Then they engaged Bain for an acquisition, 51% controlling stake. Uh, they didn't agree to sell. Then they ended up having like minority investments, like divestment of 10% share for $1 billion. So they cashed out $1 billion. They kept the company with themselves. They didn't include the restaurant business in the $10 billion business, which was the packaged food foray. So Haldiram's family, Delhi family, and Nagpur family combined, and then they had like a $10 billion value round at $1 billion private equity sale, right? So they positioned as if they were going to sell the company, but at the end of the day, they just kept the company, shopped around, got the best offer, exactly as I was hoping, because I didn't want them to sell. And now, since homegrown foods are going up, you'll see people like Haldiram benefiting a lot, right? How does that sound to you guys? Does that sound nice? Definitely does, right? Definitely does. We'll have Haldiram's as India's McDonald's, right? India's answer to McDonald's. Haldiram's, by the way, is bigger than McDonald's and Jubilant put together, in India. So they're already doing so much of great work. Anyway, moving on. Uh, Digital drug dealer went about biz quietly with a postal plan. So there's a case study where a multi-million narcotics marketplace was being run by Kochi by a guy named Babu, Edison Babu, and he was essentially smuggling drugs by India Post, the Indian dark service, right? So that's what he was doing. He had a big market actually, 1,127 LSD blots, uh, 131 grams of ketamine, and 70 lakhs of cryptocurrency. Now 1,000 LSD blots, or 1.1 thousand, like 1,100 LSD blots. Each LSD blot costs around 1,500 to 2,500 rupees or 3,000 rupees. Don't ask me how I know that. But if let's say an average of 2,000 rupees, and there is 1,100 LSD blots, so how much is that in total? 1,000 times 2,000, 1,000. I am bad with zeros. Can somebody do quick math, or let me just try? 1,000 multiplied by 1,000 by 1,000 is 1 million. So 10 lakh. So 10 lakh rupees worth LSD was seized in his operations, which is very sad, right? I mean, so I have read a book. In fact, I have been a great fan of Albert Hoffman, sir. 10 lakhs, you're right, Mr. Patil. So Albert Hoffman, sir, was the inventor of LSD. Okay, LSD is lysergic acid diethylamide. It's a it's a psychedelic drug. It's a hallucinogen, and one of the. It's just an extraordinary. Yeah, it's quite minor actually. It's nothing big. 10 lakhs is nothing, right? But anyway, he had 70 lakhs in crypto, 10 lakh in LSD, 131 grams of ketamine. I don't know how much that would be. So he had like 600 drug shipments around the world in just 18 months. 18 months, 600. Well, even that's not a lot, right? So let's say if 20 months, it's like barely 30 shipments. This guy was just doing one shipment a day essentially, one or two shipments a day. And then they caught him. But anyway, I was coming to LSD. LSD is lysergic acid diethylamide. It's something invented by Dr. Albert Hoffman, who used to be working at a Swiss pharma company. It was Sandoz, I guess. So LSD began as a revolutionary drug because it provided extraordinary psychedelic properties. And the beauty of LSD is that it is not toxic and non addictive. So let's say if you're drinking tea, or if you're drinking alcohol, or if you're drinking coffee, or if you're even smoking a cigarette, all that is addictive, right? But LSD is not addictive. And LSD is also not toxic. So LSD is essentially non-toxic, non-addictive psychedelic drug. Which book you recommend for the story of LSD? I'll come to that, Mr. Patil. That's what I'm talking about. So LSD is non-toxic, non-addictive, hallucinogen, uh, psychedelic drug, which has opened up people's lives. People have like their lives have been changed. Okay. Now there are a lot of psychedelic drugs other than LSD, and a lot of other euphoria providing drugs like, let's say, MDMA, which is ecstasy, ketamine, or a lot of these drugs, right? Uh, they're stimulants like cocaine, heroin. All of these drugs are toxic and all of these drugs are addictive, but not LSD. LSD is non toxic, non addictive, hallucinogen, and psychedelic drug. Now, when it was invented, it proved to be a very, very nice thing because, people's perceptions were altered, people's imaginations were freed, and they had a different, mild altering experience. Some of them have had outer body experience, and so on and so forth. It was just extraordinary what LSD provided for an experience. Then it started getting used by for therapy, for psychoanalysis, for because when you're doing psychoanalysis or the whole psychology, essentially there are two parts of it, right? One is postnatal, which is which talks about trauma, childhood trauma, and so on and so forth. And then is prenatal, which is like DNA based, uh, you know. So it started getting used in therapy, and then it also started getting used in uh, for terminal patients, for cancer patients who had no hope to survive. It started getting used as a pain reliever because the perception of pain gets dissolved, right? And the person gets freed in a way from pain, and they feel a lot of euphoria and so on. So it started getting used as a therapy for people in that way, for terminal patients. However, in 1960s, it also began like a uh, hippie culture where people started getting freed with this new creation, and then a lot of anti-war things also started happening because of US Vietnam War. The culture shifted to the hippie culture began, and then what they did was they just banned LSD. For now, they could have prescribed it, like, and kept it, regulated it, but they just banned it. And they just didn't ban the use of LSD, they also banned the research of LSD. Like, they just banned laboratory research of LSD, something that was proving to be so beneficial for people, something that was proving to be so helpful for people, something that was doing such good work for so many people. They just banned the research of it. And since then, LSD has been an underground drug, you know. So, Mr. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, he said that taking LSD was two or three of the most important experiences of my life. And he's right. He's right, because there are two ways to attain that kind of let's say, mental state or whatever you can call it, right? One is like you become a yogi and you do extraordinary meditation, and you like, I've done Vipassana for 10 days twice, and it's heavy, it's extraordinary. Vipassana has its own place, right? But you have like years of meditation, maybe then you've experienced that kind of transcendental state. Or you use LSD, and it had cultural ramifications, it had social ramifications, it had imaginative ramification, and so on. So they banned it, they totally banned the research of it. Now people can wonder why. Now I read, this comes to the book recommendation, Mr. Patil. I read the book by Mr. Albert Hoffman. He's written two books. Number one is LSD, My Problem Child, Sacred Drugs, Mysticism and Science. Reflections on Sacred Drugs, Mysticism and Science. So the book is called LSD, My Problem Child, Reflections on Sacred Drugs, Mysticism and Science. It's one of the best books I've ever read. I have gifted that book to people, many people. I have like gifted LSD, My Problem Child to people, even though it's such an expensive book. It's like 3,500-4,000 rupees. So it has taken me a lot of heart to actually gift it to people, but I have, because it's just very important. Because clubbing LSD with every other drug is a sin. So in that book, Dr. Albert Hoffman, rest in peace, he lived till 102 years, by the way, Dr. Albert Hoffman. So he very calmly and politely and very scientifically talks about the origins of LSD, the whole psilocybin, and the whole origins and science behind LSD. So he didn't want to make LSD. So what was going on was they were trying to make a drug for migraine. Okay, so they made a drug for migraine, and it started causing some sort of hallucinations. So then they removed that particular part of the drug, and then they got that drug. But in that journey they also discovered LSD, which sort of had its own effects. So it was just, he talks about it, and then how they found that LSD, if LSD is a synthetic drug, right? It's not a natural drug, it's a synthetic drug. However, it has its origins in nature, right? So it comes out of fungus, some sort of cactus plant. I'm forgetting the name. So it's natural, and it also is very similar in composition to the natural mushrooms, which exist in some part of Mexico, and so on and so forth. So he traces that journey of LSD in the most fascinating way, and it is a book which everybody should read. Because now you got to think that why did they just ban LSD and label it as, like, why? What was it causing that was so bad? It was just non-toxic, non-addictive drug. Could have used it as a part of the research, right? It could have been a part of the research. LSD, like, sure, people wouldn't have been able to make it or use it, but you could have let research go on for it. Why would you ban the research of LSD as well? So then you start doubting the whole pharma industry as a play. Now, Dr. Albert Hoffman wasn't, he didn't talk like that. He didn't talk in any conspiratorial way, right? No conspiracy theories were suggested by him, of course. But as a regular human being, you ought to feel that why would you do that, right? And if somebody has done that, would you trust them? Would you trust them? So my direct heuristic has been to literally distrust the pharma nexus, the industry part of it. I'm not talking about the science part of it. Of course, there should be research, there should be a lot of science, but the industry part of it is deeply, deeply concerning. And with that, a lot of people, a lot of students are rushing to biotech labs overseas. So a lot of students are essentially going towards gene editing, and 40% of Indian STEM students in UK have opted for biotech and life sciences over 2 years. Medical biotech, synthetic biology, gene editing, bioinformatics, pharma R&D, and so on and so forth. Now, why do you think this is happening? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency. Why would you think that is happening? Oh, by the way, I missed the second book recommendation. Second was Insight Outlook by Dr. Albert Hoffman. Now that's a philosophy book. The first one was a science, social science, and uh, ramifications of LSD, the biography of LSD. The second book was Insight Outlook, where he talks about perception of reality. What is reality? Is reality what we see? No, it's not. Because in reality, there's nothing like a concept of color, right? Color is just perceived by humans, right? In reality, there's nothing called smell. Smell is not real. Smell is just perception, right? So his philosophy said that reality is, think of it as a transmitter and a receiver, and how they are calibrated defines what reality is. So let's say if you're a dog, you don't see colors and you hear different frequencies. Humans just hear 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, but there are insects which hear below 20 hertz and beyond 20,000 hertz. From for them, reality is a totally different thing, and that's just the scientific level of reality. Maybe there's a spiritual level to reality which people don't understand, right? So that was the book. Very, very good book. Insight Outlook and LSD My Problem Child. Great stuff. Extraordinary. Yeah, so Indian students are rushing to biotech now. Can you think about why that is happening? Would you like to take a second to guess why that is happening? Of course, they've not mentioned it here in the research that it's like 40% of UK people are taking biotech. Why? Why? Okay, I heard you. I heard you. Because computer sciences might just be looking at a serious dip. To increase fertility, maybe, says Mr. Patil. Mr. Patil, that is an interesting dimension to it. But no, I'm talking about a career choice. So, as a career choice, people are going to biotech because computer science is not that green anymore, right? With all the AI and everything. So if AI is going to do a lot of coding, as viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember, like a person said, now if a person says that they're quitting our company, they say no problem, we'll just buy another license to Vercel, Cursor, right? So if that's the reduced leverage of coders, why would people like to go to computer science, right? Because not everybody can be a 100xer, an AI genius, or an AI front runner who would be hired by Meta for $20 million, right? So this shift showcase, just like look at this shift and mark it, 6 July. It's basically a timestamp of how career preferences are changed against computer science, right? So for last 20 years, all engineering just died, right? Nobody wanted to be a mechanical engineer unless they were stupid like me. I was deeply passionate about mechanical engineering, but nobody wanted to be a mechanical engineer, or let's say civil engineer, or let's say biotech engineer, least of all in India, right? But everybody wanted to be a computer engineer in IT. They wanted to work in IT because that's where uh, the money was. Chemical engineering. Now it's gonna shift because people in computer sciences are scared. Moving on, fossil fuel run cars steal sales show, EVs in slow lane. So we've discussed that a lot. We've discussed how EVs are essentially not really. I mean, they are picking up. To be fair, from 2 to 2.5%, they are now at 4%. But people are seeing that while government has targets like 30% of Indian cars should be EV by 2030, that's just like 5 years from now. Uh, 9 out of 10 cars essentially sold were just fossil fuel cars. And if you look at the shift, and if you look at the composition of this shift, now Tata sells a lot of EVs. Tata sells a lot of uh, you know these cars, ICE cars, internal combustion engine. Where is Toyota going? Can you guess where Toyota is going? Just a hint. Toyota is a Japanese company, and Japan and Japanese companies have been slightly away from the EV revolution deliberately, and you know why. Hybrid. You're right, Mr. Patil. Toyota's 30% sales, in fact, 30% sales are hybrids. So to counter China, and they're trying. So you're right, and but still, what they're showing is that CNG, petrol, diesel, and EVs are still at the slow lane, despite all the PLEs, despite the FAME subsidies, and so on and so on. A LinkedIn user, Mr. Manish Malik says, not just the examples of dogs and insects, every human has different spectrum of perception, making reality different for everyone. Yes, exactly. So that was the spiritual side of things, right? Or let's say genetic side of things, or that's what Mr. Dr. Albert Hoffman talked about in Insight Outlook. Beautiful book, beautiful book. So he was talking about the scientific aspects of things, right? Like vision. What is color? Color is not real. If you're looking at, if your eyes, the frequency, the basic wavelength of the vision that we have, what if it just gets, you know, uh, shorter? You'll be able to see through things, right? You'll have uh, infinite vision. You'll, as insects do, like they can see through small bricks, right? And so on and so forth. Like many, not insects, I'm not sure, but and if you, let's say, had a different eyesight, as many organisms do, they would see the world very differently. So that's what he focused on, the science of perception, right? And it was just a brilliant book. Anyway, so Toyota is still banking heavy on hybrids. It's selling a lot of hybrids in India, and that is expected for the people who watch Thinker's Frequency, right? Geopolitical winds to set sweeten India's apple harvest. So apple comes from Turkey, comes from Iran, comes from Afghanistan, and with all the troubles that are going on in these countries, especially Iran and Turkey, Indian produce of apples, which comes from Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh, it's gonna see a bit of a fillip, right? So India's apple imports, 97 million comes from dollars. Turkey, 90 million from Iran, 50 million from Afghanistan, and then 33 million from South Africa and US. So of course, if the top two players go out of the window, it is great news for Himachal Pradesh people and also Kashmiris. So we were talking about ICEs, right? Uh, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, uh-huh. India's auto market could reach 7.5 million units by 2030. Right now we are at 4 million, 40 lakh cars, and 30% is expected to be marked for electric vehicles. So Tata has committed 35,000 crores towards its passenger and EV businesses in the next 4 years, and so on and so forth. So I talked about this very well. Moving on. Boom, 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 boom. EY has gotten a notice by Akash, the Byju's related company, and they say that EY is the resolution professional for Akash, for Byju's, and they're also working with Alan. So they say there's conflict of interest. Come on, come on, you can't take it. So EY says that we are a very big company. So two different people, two different practices run under EY. They might not have anything in common, but they don't want to buy it, and they shouldn't, right? They shouldn't. So that was that. Moving on. It's very interesting. There's a huge piece on nose job. Nose job, not the surgery, but the fragrance market. So apparently, fragrance as a market has a new, you know, let's say, new avatar, and that avatar is copied fragrances. So let's say uh, some expensive fragrances from Chanel, or very very expensive. I can't even name because I've never bought a bottle of scent, but they are very costly. So what these people do is they get those bottles and they try to replicate that particular smell through chromatography and spectroscopy and so on and so forth. They use a lot of chemistry to decipher the exact components. They reverse engineer that particular bit, and then they replicate that particular smell, uh, you know composition, constitution, and they sell it for very cheap. So you could get a copy of a very, very expensive, like Shah Rukh Khan scent. You could get a copy of that for very cheap, and it works well. So, and it lasts well. It is attuned to Indian temperatures and weather and so on and so forth. And that is becoming a big market. And the beauty is, from a legal standpoint, from an intellectual property standpoint, there is no provision in law for smells. So you can't like patent a smell. You can't have an intellectual property protection on smell. Now that opens up the market, right? And that's exactly what's happening. So a lot of these peoples are setting up their labs, and they are running very, very successful businesses where they sell inspired by and then Chanel or whoever that person is, right? The original brands, and they study those. They try to replicate, and then they sell it, and people really buy it. So I've never bought. So I'm part of the problem as far as India is considered, right? uh, I don't buy anything. Because of me, consumption is low. Because of me, the economy isn't really flourishing. Because the only thing I buy is like books and guitars, right? As you can see, a musical instrument. So that's not good for the economy. But this particular business is pretty interesting. So I recently, a friend told me about this, that she had bought a Tom Ford perfume for cheap and so on and so forth, like very expensive. I didn't know the names of those things, but she said it was very expensive, and now this particular thing is just $1,400 and so on and so forth. So this is pretty amazing. Indian perfume market is at 1 billion, and now how much is this particular market? So I'll just tell you. I So original Tom Ford cost 12,000, and this particular thing costs 1,700. And the poor Tom Ford guys can't even file a lawsuit against these people, right? Anyway, moving on, I'll just tell you the market size. If they mentioned, I would have remembered it because I left. Yeah, Indian's fragrance market was 1 billion, expected to grow to 3.2 billion in 2033. Uh, okay, so duplicate perfumes lead to brand dilution, and financial losses are quantized at 2 billion, but total market of these inspired perfumes is not mentioned. So that can make you think. So they had a case, but it was about the packaging of it. So you can like, how bad it is to be a scent maker, right? You can't patent your creation, but all you can have for intellectual property is the packaging of it. So this particular market is growing, and we're moving forward. Speaking of something that is not moving forward, is the Dalai Lama situation. Now, are you aware of the Dalai Lama situation? Uh, House of EM5 might be one such company, as their prices are really reasonable. Good morning, Mr. Mahindra Bansori says, why startups are failing even after getting large funding? Well, that's a long discussion. But Mr. Kumar, House of EM5, I'm sure. So there's a company called Zidane Fragrance and so on and so forth. Arabian Aroma, started by Harshad Gupta. I'm not sure about the market because, never bought a thing, but yes, could be. So that's something. Anyway, do you know about the Dalai Lama situation? Dalai Lama. So it's a very complicated thing, right? Very, very complicated. So we have the 14th Dalai Lama, who is in India right now. India in India, the Tibetan government in exile is in McLeodganj Dharamshala, right? And the how they choose their, uh, let's say, the next Dalai Lama is that is there is a concept of reincarnation. So they believe in a concept of reincarnation, where the real Dalai Lama dies, and they talk to the oracles, the next in line, the people they talk to, so on and so forth, and his soul is transferred into a young kid, and they detect that soul through religious practices, and they find out that this particular kid will be the next Dalai Lama. He's the reincarnation of Dalai Lama, right? And then that kid becomes uh, Dalai Lama, right? China, which is the, let's say, they are invaders of Tibet. They feel Tibet is a part of their territory, but Tibet has its own history, and it says that we are a different country. But China has essentially conquered Tibet, and they have complete control over it. So China doesn't want reincarnation to pick the next Dalai Lama, because then the political conflict between Tibet, whatever little form it exists, dies. Okay, so right now there's a Tibetan struggle where they see Tibet as their country and China as a as an invader, as a colonizer. Okay, now China sees these people as problems because they are obviously insurgents for them. They're secessionists, separatists, right? The thing that is holding this together is the 90-year-old Dalai Lama, who is the 14th Dalai Lama. Now, if this particular faction, this particular political constitution dies, or let's say loses its essence or its relevance, China will win, because even though the local Tibetan people don't like China, they don't have any options, because China, what it has done is it's exported a lot of Chinese people to Tibet, changing its demography essentially, right? Now, what has happened is China, what they think is the right way to go about is that it's like a golden urn. They have literally a slate, an urn, and in which a lot of names are written. And then, the council picks a name, and that person becomes Dalai Lama. So they don't believe in letting the current Dalai Lama have the power to choose reincarnation as the next pick for Dalai Lama, and obviously their religious tradition is against it. So now that particular problem is up. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know we talked about how uh, China and India got into a lot of crossfire because when everything in Tibet happened, they took exile in China, which led to China and India's uh, confrontation. You know, because it's very complicated right now. China is so strong; they consider Arunachal as South Tibet, so Ladakh is in a problematic state. So India has been fighting, but China doesn't want this to happen. Now India has been very quiet about this. India doesn't really try. I mean, it gives shelter to the entire Tibetan community in Dharamshala is beautiful, right? In Bir, in Dharamshala, in a lot of places, very nice Tibetan communities have been resettled, and India shelters them, but India can't take a political stance. So, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, who's the former law minister, one of the best in the biz, great guy, a lot of respect. So he said that China's urn method should not be the way Dalai Lama is chosen. It should be reincarnation. And then he had to apologize because they told him, uh, the government must have told him to shut up, because, and then he said, I was only talking as a devotee, not as a political figure, because I'm a Buddhist, and this is what it is. So it's very, very complicated, but it looks like that the Tibetan struggle is, for all practical purposes, not gonna make it, right? China has essentially trampled upon it very, very effectively. So, brief history of Tibetan struggle. Pre-Buddhist Tibet was dominated by Bon, shamanistic indigenous tradition. Okay, First diffusion of Buddhism with Tibetan king marrying princesses of Nepal and China, Tang China. Now, 8th CE, that is 8th century AD, founding of Tame, Tibet's first Buddhist monastery. So this is the Buddhism Tibetan scene going on. Then 10th to 12th CE, you have second diffusion of Buddhism from India. Then the title Dalai Lama, first bestowed by Mongol chief Altan Khan on this. He was the third Dalai Lama. That happened in 1578. Now this becomes political in 90s, but this was important. So 16th century, fifth Dalai Lama establishes theocratic rule in Tibet. So essentially, this is when Tibet becomes a Buddhist dominated political entity, right? 1578, 1642, right? Now 18th, 150 years later, 18th century, King dynasty installs a protectorate over Tibet. So from 18th century, China, essentially King dynasty from China, they lay their hand on Tibet, right? So before that, Tibet was an independent thing. It existed, theocratic rule existed for 150 years and so on and so forth. Then in 1793, okay, King Emperor codifies procedures for recognizing Dalai Lamas by golden urn method. So 1793 is when China came out with this golden urn method, right, which the Tibetan Buddhists, the traditionalists didn't agree to. 1903, British expedition led by Francis forces entry into Tibet. Now Britishers enter into Tibet 1903. Tibet declares independence in 1913. Okay, 1913 Tibet becomes a modern political country which stands on its own, and 1950 China invades Tibet. So the country which essentially was recognized as a political entity in 1642, and even before, 14th century, essentially 1950 is when it gets taken over by China, and then everything gets screwed. This was the 14th Dalai Lama. He was just instated in 1940. So just after 10 years of his being Dalai Lama, he saw China invading Tibet and making a part of its own country. So 1959 he comes to India. 1960 government exile in Dharamshala, and then since then the whole sad situation with Tibet is on. So some movies that you can watch about it, good movie. There's a movie called 7 Years in Tibet, very nice movie, Brad Pitt. About the smell thing, if you want to watch the nose thing that we discussed, you could watch Scent of a Woman and Perfume, the Story of a Murderer, great movies. And so that's that. Those are the movie recommendations. Great movies, all of them. Moving on, Trump signs his signature policy bill at Independence Day event, the big beautiful bill. And there's a lot of discussion on it. So Mr. Musk believes that it's going to raise the deficit, but Team Trump believes that it's going to cut deficit. It's not going to raise deficit because it's going to stimulate a lot of growth in a lot of ways, which is going to reduce deficit. And that's why everything is screwed, right? Speaking of what is screwed, the US is talking about a deal with China as far as TikTok is considered. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember that we talked about TikTok and how it is the political force of nature by China. So there are two ways to take over a country, right? Like Britishers had an opium flood in China, where they ruined China by supplying opium to them, right? They drugged the youth of China, and that's how Chinese got ruined, right? Now China is doing the same thing with US through fentanyl, routed through Mexico. And maybe it's also doing that in India. Maybe a lot of drugs that Indian youth takes are coming from China, because it's very easy to control a population who's just drugged out, right? Now, but the second drug which has come into existence is the social drug, right? It's the technology drug. It's TikTok. Now, India banned TikTok in 2020, but US hasn't. So US is trying to make a deal with TikTok. So what US is trying to do is that it's saying that you sell TikTok to America, any American company, and it can run. Why? Because they want to preserve the economic value of TikTok. Because if TikTok is banned, all that economic value is going to get destroyed, right? US TikTok must be worth some $60 billion, because ByteDance, the owner of TikTok globally, is worth what? $400 billion? Let me check. ByteDance, market cap. So $300 billion. So yeah, US must be 60-80 billion dollars, maybe even $100 billion. I don't know. So they want to preserve it. They want to sell TikTok so that they could manage it. Because people say that TikTok in China is very different from TikTok in US. TikTok in US is retarded. It's mentally depraved. It's just an endless, crock of shit. But in China, they use TikTok to inspire young people to do more science, to do more inventions, and so on and so forth. So it is a drug. It's a fight. And US will begin TikTok deal with talks with China this week, says Trump. And if this deal doesn't happen, if China says we won't sell TikTok, they'll essentially ban TikTok. And then it'll be very good news for Meta. So when India banned TikTok, it was very good news for ShareChat. It started getting all the money. And then it couldn't really survive because Facebook took its place. So TikTok got banned. Multi-billion-dollar companies, Indian companies started up, but they couldn't really create a product which had a business model. So just Facebook, Instagram ended up taking its place. So in India you have Reels, in US you have TikToks, right? Moving on. By the way, this particular LSD trade which this guy was doing was through Monero. It's basically a crypto which offers a lot of security. And there's a browser called Tor, through which darknet is accessed. So that particular bits of information I had missed. Moving on. Marico's export business is growing 14%, and Dabur exports grew 17%. ITC's export revenue rose 7%, as I told you before. Moving on. That's it. That's what I have for you today, folks. Slow day for news. And, how did you like it? It was nice, right? It was fun. It's always fun. It's always fun. It's always fun talking to you, and today was no different. Thank you, Mr. Patil, Mr. Rajakumar, Mr. Mahendra Bansode, Mr. Manish Malik, Mr. Ashim Garg. I had a wonderful time talking to you all. I hope you had a lot of fun on this 42nd episode of Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. I wish you a beautiful day, personally and professionally. And I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Bye-bye.